What up, gamers? Welcome back to Gamers Bay. It's DJ, and today we're going to talk about the Xbox One controller for Windows, which I recently had a chance to test out on Windows 7, 8.1, and Windows 10. And what it is basically, it's essentially the exact same controller as for the Xbox One console, but this is designed specifically for Windows PCs. And it works with the use of a USB thumbstick or with Bluetooth. But there's a few caveats to that. For one, the Bluetooth only works with Windows 10, not with Windows 7 or 8.1. You have to use a wireless USB stick for Windows 7 8.1. I had a chance to test this controller out with about 60 games across all three operating systems, and the results were pretty much the same regardless of which operating system I worked with. Um, One thing to note is that there was actually a lot of pros, and unfortunately there was a lot of cons to this controller, and for that reason I do not recommend this controller for use with PC gaming. It's great with the Xbox One console, but man, it's really kind of sucks when it comes to PC gaming with this controller, which I'll get to that in just a few minutes here. First, I want to look at start by taking a look at the pros of the controller, what the really good features are. It's not all bad. For one, it's got this really grainy grip, and I really like that because I don't feel like my hands are slipping all over the controller, especially when you get to these games like Left 4 Dead, which I've done like 60 something videos of on Gamerspace so far. You get 45 minutes, an hour in the game, your hands are sweating, and it's like with the 360 controller, it's got this really smooth surface, and your hands start to sweat, and it just seems like they just slide all over the controller. Another thing I really liked about the Xbox One controller is that it appears to be a lot more power efficient. 25 hours of use didn't even seem to really dent the batteries in this controller at all, which I only use Energizers, I don't use anything else. But with the 360 controller, the problem I had with these was that they were a real cow for power. I can go, even today when I'm doing gameplay videos, I could go through a battery pack about every 5 to 7 days of gameplay when I'm doing videos for our channels. And with this, it seems like I can play for hours on end and the batteries don't really get drained at all. Now, the controls, very, very, very responsive. Just absolutely spot on. I tested this out with FPS and fighting games, including Street Fighter 3, the arcade version, Second Impact, and I tested it with Ryu and Ken, and I think Bison, and the controls were just spot on. I was able to pull off all their fighting maneuvers quick, fast, in a hurry. There was no lag. There was no false positives in the control schemes that I used to see as an issue with the 360 controller. Just spot on controls. This was great. When I tested this out in Left 4 Dead on Windows 7 and Windows 8.1, ultra responsive controls. It was great for sniping from long range and for short range attacks. This is a great controller for FPS gamers in the PC. I felt like it was a lot more accurate and aiming down your scope, aiming down your sights seemed a lot more accurate with this controller than what I could get versus the 360 controller. But there's also some negatives to this controller. Out of the 60 or so games that I tested, it turns out that a lot of games did not work with this controller. I was either unable to assign buttons to the controller itself, or I would go to boot up the game and there would be all this wacky movements going on when I wasn't even touching the controller. In fact, When I tested out the Xbox One controller with the recently released indie fighting game, Fight of Gods, the controller didn't work at all. In fact, upon the first match, my character just started moving to the left of the screen. I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck's going on? You know, oh man, my controller's broken. What's the deal here? Well, I went over to the Fight of Gods forum on Steam, and sure enough, at the top of the list, there was somebody complaining about the exact same issue. Their character's just moving around the screen, they're not even doing anything, and the controller won't work with the game. And so that's a real disappointment for such a modern controller. You know, and here this controller works great on the Xbox One console. But if you're planning on getting an Xbox One controller for the PC or using it with the PC, I'm telling you, you're going to be really disappointed, because I tested this out with a number of Mugen games, including Harambe vs. Capcom and a bunch of others, and I had trouble assigning buttons, and for some games, it just didn't work at all. I tested it out with a bunch of games in MAME. Same issue. I was unable to assign buttons to a lot of the games, and that was a really big problem. So I didn't like that. And I kept finding myself through my hours and hours of testing this controller out last week that it was just like kind of a waste of time. I'd go to boot up a game, and it's kind of like hit or miss as to whether or not the controller's even going to work or not. And then I'm sitting there fighting, you know, with the button configurations, trying to get the buttons assigned to the controller, and it's just not going to work. I tried updating the drivers, and that made no difference either. Now, to be sure it wasn't an issue with my operating system or with the controller itself, like I said, I tested across 3 separate operating systems: Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. And I had the exact identical results across all 3 operating systems. And whether I played Fight of Gods on Windows 8 or Windows 10, it was the same issue. I got the same exact awesome responsive controls, though, in games like Left 4 Dead on both Windows 7 and Windows 8.1. So there you go. So the games that it does work with, it's really amazing. Ultra responsive controls are spot on, but the lack of compatibility, you know, and I don't think that the issue is with the games. I think the issue is with the software drivers for the controller itself. I think Microsoft has a big problem on their hands. If they want this controller to work on Windows, they're going to have to find a way to fix these compatibility issues. You know, the input controls for most games are pretty generic code, and you know, they put in a certain input, and they expect the controller to be able to respond with the output. And unfortunately, that's not what I see here. That's not what I see going on with this controller. So that's a really big problem. And here, I paid $60 for this controller. You know, I went next door to Best Buy. I didn't feel like waiting for it in the mail, and picked it up. I don't recommend this. Like I said, you know, most PC gamers are used to using a mouse and a keyboard. I am an avid PC gamer, but I do not prefer a mouse and a keyboard. I prefer to play with the controllers. So, you know, each to their own, right? But I have been using an Xbox 360 controllers with Windows operating systems for over a decade, since the Xbox 360 first came out. And out of all the games I've ever played on every version of Windows since Windows XP, I have never played a game that was not compatible with this controller, with the Xbox 360 controller, ever. It's never happened. And with the Xbox One controller, it seems like 1 out of every 3 games will not work. You can't assign buttons, or there's all this funkiness going on the screen that you can't control. And it's like, what are you supposed to do, you know? And you know, by the way, I used, and you can pick up on eBay. This is what I use to interface my Xbox 360 controller with my Windows operating systems. This works on every version of Windows, from Windows XP, 7, 8.1, and Windows 10. These cost about $12. You can get the official one or you can get an off-brand one. I recommend getting the official Microsoft one. This one recently burned out about a few weeks ago, so I got to pick up a new one now. But I can't recommend this controller for use with PC gaming. It may be great for the games it works with, but who wants to sit there and go and launch a game and go, oh, this isn't going to work, I'm going to have to play something else. Oh, I can't even play this game. That's just garbage. Nobody wants to do that, right? So compatibility wise, the Xbox 360 controller, even though the Xbox 360 is long gone, guess what? It wins. It wins. It's 100% compatible with thousands upon thousands, probably millions of games in the PC. Never had any compatibility issues with this ever. And then I go and pick up the Xbox One controller, and it's hit or miss. You know, it's a guessing game as to whether or not it's even going to work at all. So hopefully Microsoft can smooth out some of the problems, and I think that they probably will over time. My recommendation is don't blame the developers of games for the incompatibilities with the Xbox One controller in Windows, because I really don't believe it's their fault. I believe this is actually an issue with the software drivers that Microsoft is supplying. If you try to apply any driver updates, it's not going to solve the problem. Like I said, I know that after testing across 3 different operating systems and getting the exact identical results from the same games on 3 different operating systems with the same controller, there's no doubt this has some driver issues that really need to be fixed in order to make this something worth using in the Windows operating system. By the way, just a side note, before we go any further, for those of you who watch our channel often, you're probably wondering why I haven't been doing any gameplay videos recently, and it's because my NVIDIA graphics card fried on my computer. So I can't do any gameplay videos right now, and luckily this computer, this laptop, I actually have and also had an integrated Intel graphics chip, and so I'm using that, and that's how I'm still able to do webcams. But I tried to run my games with it, it's not going to work, and with my graphics card gone, there's nothing I can do. It's just fried. It's totally cooked. So and by the way, this is kind of like awkward because I don't normally get up in front of the camera like this and show my face, but oh well, it is what it is. I guess I have to get used to it, right? So no, I do not recommend this controller for Windows. Great, it's a great controller, very responsive controls, but if it's not going to work with your games, then what's the point of having it? You know, here for $25, you can go and pick up a 360 controller, and an extra $12, you can get the official wireless adapter. This one lasted me for over a decade. You really can't go wrong, you know. In fact, this has outlasted 3 sets of Xbox 360 controllers I've gone through over the years that are all, you know, I bought these like 2 years ago, and they're about cooked too. This isn't going to last much longer. I've done like thousands of hours of gameplay, thousands upon thousands of hours of gameplay across 2 360 controllers just in Windows alone, not even including my console. And they're pretty sturdy, but they do wear out. They do go out, but these are really reliable. Now, as far as reliability with the Xbox One controller, it doesn't feel flimsy or anything. I don't think it's something you want to throw on the floor, but it feels pretty sturdy. You know, and like I said, you know, the big plus with this over the 360 controller is the analog controls. It was just like, wow, you know, really good for fighting games. And Mugen, I saw excellent results with all the Mugen-based fighting games like Harambe vs. Capcom, spot on, Street Fighter 3, a lot of the Mugen arcade fighting games in MAME. The arcade fighting games I tested worked really well. Extremely fast, responsive controls, and I really like that. You know, because I always felt kind of like with the 360 controller, it was kind of like the analog controls were always a little bit off. Like, you know, I've been playing Left 4 Dead for years in the PC, and I tried playing with the mouse and keyboard. I'm like, this just doesn't work for me. And, you know, there's always a little bit of marginal error there. No matter how I set the sensitivity in the game, there was always a little bit of marginal error in there. And, I don't see that with this. This it's like a mouse. It's like I'm playing with a mouse and a keyboard. I get the same level of accuracy playing Left 4 Dead with this controller as I did with my mouse, and that is really incredible because it's not something I expected at all, to get that type of responsiveness. I mean, when you pull back on these thumbsticks, it's just like you can feel they're a lot more fine-tuned than what the 360 controller was. You know, and of course you can fine tune the sensitivity of your directional controls in games like Left 4 Dead and Call of Duty and stuff. And I would imagine that this controller would be excellent for titles like Call of Duty after testing it out with Left 4 Dead and seeing the results I saw there. Excellent, excellent, excellent for long range attacks, short range attacks. Very, very accurate. I aiming down my sights when sniping in Left 4 Dead. It was like, wow, yeah, it was really like just having a mouse in my hands. It was weird, you know, very, very, very accurate. But I don't recommend it if you play a lot of PC games and you like to play with a controller versus a mouse and a keyboard. You're better off the 360 controller because, like I said, it's compatible with everything. I have never played a PC game that the 360 controller did not work with. And for the price being half the price of this thing, you really can't go wrong. So another thing to note, the PC version of the Xbox One controller, it does come with the USB thumbstick. And, you know, if you don't really like this sticking out the side of your laptop or your desktop, you also have, or if you just need to get a little bit better signal, it also comes with this extension cable. And I thought that was really cool too, that you just plug into here and it gives you, this way you don't have to worry about knocking it or tearing up your you know, knocking into it or something like that, tearing up your USB drive. But, regardless, like I said, regardless of whether I used Bluetooth in Windows 10 or if I used this wireless adapter, it really made no difference. The effects were exactly the same across all the games I tested. The games that didn't work in one operating system did not work in another, and vice versa. And you know, like I said, with games like Fight of Gods, it was really wacky. I mean, you just had it was like your characters just moving all over the screen, and I'm not even touching the controller. You know, that just seems really, really odd. So, yeah, I'm really disappointed. I'm really, really disappointed in this, especially after playing the Xbox One so many times, and you know, seeing how awesome the controller is on all of the, you know, the majority of games on Xbox One. It really is really, really great, but with the PC with PC gaming, it kind of sucks, you know. So I'm actually going to default back to my 360 controllers moving forward for the bulk of my production for gameplay related content on for like games like Left 4 Dead and stuff like that, and you know, and the videos that we produce for our channel. And so, as another side note, because even though I can't do any gameplay videos right now, Gamers Bay moderator Michael Haney is still going to be producing videos for Gamers Bay for over the course of this next month or so. So he's getting ready to start a whole series on classic Atari 2600 games and possibly some Commodore and some other stuff. So definitely keep a lookout for those. They're coming soon. So it's not all bad. And for now, I can always do like stuff like this, like product reviews, or I can do like gaming news related stuff until I can get my hands on a new computer, because this thing's about fried. But many thanks for watching. Also, hit that like and subscribe button. And check out Gamers Bay Community on Google+. There'll be a link below in the description. And if you have a chance, follow Gamers Bay brand page on Google+ as well, our official brand page. We share a lot of gaming news and usually our latest videos and posts from our community members as well. And if you have a gaming channel and you want to promote your videos, you're welcome to post in Gamers Bay. We also have another gaming community that's just for YouTubers, and I think there's like close to 3,000 members there, and most of them are YouTubers. It's a lot of gaming channels. That's the Gamers Video Archive. You can check that out as well. There'll be links from Gamers Bay brand page and from the About section of our channel here. Anyways, many thanks for watching. Again, be sure to like and subscribe, stay up to date, and until next time, take care.